Did I drip dry?
Yeah, arms out, drip dry. That's how.
What is wrong with you?
No, that's how you do it.
Drip dry. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and then you warm up, and then you need to warm up
All hanging
naturally.
out.
I had to get here. This was 8:33.
Yeah,
I
you
had to
drip.
come to
Mate,
this podcast.
you drip dry in like a minute. You get cold. You warm up naturally, shivering along the way, and that's how it's done.
I think that probably sets up the experience level for us. My name's Michael. This is Benny, and we've got Dan over there. This is the How to Get Good podcast, where we try to figure out how to get good. Today's episode, you might have guessed, Benny,
Ice bath.
which cold shower could be a part of.
No, it's ice bath.
Okay, it's ice bath.
I don't
It's
think
not
we're
cold
even
showers.
talking about cold shower at all.
My name's Michael. I'm 38. I've done basically fuck all with health my entire life, and so I'm starting from scratch now. And I thought I'd get involved to sort of speak for the everyman that hasn't really invested much in their health, wellness, fitness, diet, etc. And yeah, I'm just sort of on a quest as my middle age has hit me to get good.
Yeah, and I'm Benny. I'm a 32-year-old health tech founder. I follow health trends from business perspective, but also personally to apply into my life.
Absolute rig also.
Yeah, we'll see. I've spent my life self-experimenting, all about self-improvement, picking up things along the way, not overdoing it, and then kind of in that quest for that, like living a happy, healthy life.
So ice baths is the subject. Hot topic.
No,
Cold topic.
cold topic.
Yeah, fucking. And it seems like there's just an overwhelming amount of information out there. So what we're wanting to do today is to condense it all down into practical, relatable, and most importantly, actionable information that you listening can take and go input into your lives and help you get a little bit gooder.
Yeah, hot takes on a cold topic.
Very good. So how are we going to run through today?
I think we're going to talk a little bit about what it is, where it came from, why people are doing it. I think we've got some personal experience to cover, and then just really actionable and practical tips, like how do you do it? What's the cheapest way to do it?
Where can I buy it?
Yeah, how do we get you cold today?
Is servo ice good? Do I need like a free? All of these questions we're going to dive into. But first, I suppose it makes sense to find out our experience with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's start again maybe with yours this morning. Like, all jokes aside, cold shower is the easiest way to get into this.
So my entry point was like most people's, I think. I got like a 18-second video on Instagram from a dude called Huberman who talked about, I don't know what the acronym was, like cold therapy. Dan, what's the acronym? Where they're sort of like cold response therapy, or he's like, start your day with something cold and looking at sunlight. And there was just, I can't remember what he said, but everyone was like, this is the best way to start your day, with cold
Immersion, cold therapy.
cold response, something like that.
even
shock.
for the Rain Man, this is probably not enough information.
Yeah, no, I'm being pretty vague with this. But
Yeah.
basically, the boiled down version was starting your day with something that puts you in this like under stress or under some form of pain is good, which sounds fucked for me. But yeah, so I started just dabbling with cold showers at the end of a hot shower. I didn't know if that was the right way to do it. And in my experience, and I don't know if it was placebo, and I'm one of those people who thinks placebo is just as valid. You know what I mean? I'm like, if I feel better, who gives a shit whether it works or not? I did find that it made me as alert as a coffee, and it set me up to do shit that was hard. If I had a lazy day, like I wasn't fucking doing it on Saturdays or Sundays.
Yeah.
Because that's my day. Like I don't want to.
Sure.
It feels like maybe like a wet workout almost.
So just to break that down, you get up, you're getting straight into the shower first thing, like still half asleep.
Yeah.
And it's hot?
Well, because I heard from him about this, like no coffee for 90 minutes or whatever. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, I've got to try to figure something out. And I'm a late waker, right?
Okay.
So I work from home 3 days a week.
Yeah.
So I can be up at 8:55 and in a meeting by 9.
Yeah.
Or if I'm in the office, I'm up at 8:15 on the bus at 8:30.
You get up, you get into a hot shower.
Yeah.
How long are you in the hot for?
I mean, look, obviously, don't.
Come on.
I'm a 20-minute shower kind of guy.
8:55 into a 9 a.m.
my shower.
meeting.
It's incredible pressure. So
All right, so 19 minutes of hot.
No. 17.
Okay, 17 minutes of hot, and then you crank all the way to cold.
And then I turn all the hot off, and then I sit there. I don't wet my hair every day in the shower because I've got long hair.
Well, it's beautiful.
So I will then sort of water on my chest, water on my face, and then I'll just sort of do this like a rotisserie chicken.
Yep.
I'll just keep rotating because I'll feel some parts of my body get warm again, and I'll make sure my underarms and sort of my spuds.
And how long are you doing that for?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
I could be lying. It feels like 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes. So 30 seconds to 3 minutes, and then you slam. And you go back to hot, or you turn?
No. That's it. It's my naughty little slap on the bottom before the hot wet is fantastic. I go then cold wet, and then I go into the yucky cold dry.
Yeah, and then you get out, and you dry yourself off, or do you drip dry with your arms open?
No, because I'm not a fucking psychopath.
Well, I'm just saying that was in the human video, but anyway.
I got 19 seconds, not 19 minutes. Hold on, you're supposed to just drip dry.
Yeah, drip dry a bit.
That's impractical to anyone who's late. I just don't understand how that's...
Well, you're late because of the 17-minute shower, probably not for the 30-second drip dry.
Different opinions. So no, I get probably a moist towel from the shower that I had 7 hours prior, and I dry myself, and then I get clothes on.
Cool. I mean, maybe Dan has a few comments on whether or not that's right at all. You're doing the full coward version. He already said that. But
Eat the frog.
your words.
Frog.
So
I'm just loving the rotisserie chicken, visualizing that in my mind with you with like a little shower mask, a shower cap on.
So, okay.
Yeah,
well, no, hold on. Before we jump into me, what are you doing?
Well,
Before you throw in icy ice cubes at me, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, this morning, just an average day. Just got up, rolled into a 4-degree ice bath for 3 minutes. Then,
well, hold on. Between bed to ice bath?
I'm actually living in a crappy hotel at the moment, which happens to be directly above a place where you can do ice baths.
So jump in the elevator, you go down?
Elevator, did like pretty munted, like eyes in the back of my head, not really, talking to the...
As in hungover or?
Just tired. I don't sleep very well. So I'm always very foggy until I essentially get my second coffee really. But so this is actually the first day ever I've done a morning ice bath.
Maybe that coffee could be cut if you're not sleeping too well, brother, but that's another conversation for another day.
Got to do what you got to do. But anyways, this was the first day ever I've actually started the day with an ice bath.
Your first day ever?
Yeah. I usually do it at night with saunas just because of practicality. I don't usually get to a place that has ice baths. So did one this morning and it was, pretty life-changing, I would say.
Really?
Yeah.
So we both, obviously, because we knew we were doing the podcast today, we've obviously changed our schedules a little bit.
Well, come on. It just happened.
So it just randomly happened that the day you do a podcast.
I was walking out of my hotel. There was an ice bath place that I had a membership to based off yesterday's purchase. But it just happened.
Okay. 4 degrees sounds... Because I've done some ice baths at home with a plastic blow-up inflatable thing, and I dumped 3 bags of servo ice in it.
Yeah.
I have a meat thermometer that I sort of just put in it. It shows it roughly about 9-8 degrees.
Yeah, that's cold. Yeah.
And I get in and I'm like, I couldn't be colder than this. Obviously, it can be double as cold as that.
Yeah.
What's 4 degrees feel like?
Pretty bad. Like at night, it's much easier, and it kind of depends on the size of the tub as well. But these are small ones, so it's I know you warm it up a little bit faster. But 4 degrees in the morning was like very, very, very tough. Like I can usually sit in an ice bath for probably 5 minutes. This morning, 3 minutes was like agony. My hands were like burning, and you're really just like. Essentially, when I get into ice baths, the thing I'm trying to do is like relax. Like you have this contracted, tensed up feeling, and I'm just trying to let it go, relax, and you keep going until essentially the way you've got nowhere more to go in terms of relaxing is when you can hear your heartbeat. And that's the point where you're like, oh, okay, I'm actually really relaxed. And that rep of letting it go is it's incredible. It actually feels exactly the same for me as letting go of emotional stress. Like when you're angry or when you're feeling stubborn and you have that feeling of letting something go, you get reps in from the ice bath doing that thing. That's me just relaxing my body completely. And when you can relax in an ice bath as opposed to, that's the main mistake I think I see people making, which is they're just fighting it the whole time. They're just tensed up, gritting their teeth.
How long have you been doing them for?
On and off for 5 years, and then more seriously over the last 6 months after Dan kind of got me back into them.
Yeah, because the reason I do it, because I saw Huberman talking about, I saw the Wim Hof thing. He went through the loss of his wife and jumped in the canal in Amsterdam or whenever it was in winter, and I don't think he was talking about how it wasn't planned. He just jumped in and he sort of had never felt that level of
Totally.
Like the grief and the pain.
Cleanness,
was gone.
yeah.
Yeah, and I went through a grief moment, and I would go jump in the water it's Clovelly in winter, and the water was probably only like 15, 16 degrees.
Still cold,
but it's still cold, and I just really enjoyed that being able to function under stress and like learning to breathe through it. And then I thought the logic was that then stressful elements in my life outside of the water would become easier because I was getting practice in like fighting through stressful moments and having normal.
I think relatively for sure. Like when you display elements of grit, it allows you to really, kind of compare that against other things in the day. But I think like the grounding nature is so important. Like for me anyway, if you're sitting there and you've got all these like worries or you're kind of caught in the future or the past or something about work, etc., and then you get into something really fucking cold, you like those thoughts and feelings just feel very far away.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You can't think about like, I have had a hard conversation with someone when you're literally freezing and you're just like, my hands are burning. Like it sounds a bit harsh, but it's actually like awesome. And I feel like that it's almost like an EMP just like wipes out all the head noise. And that's like one of the most valuable things for me for sure.
And I've got really wild ADHD, like incredibly wild ADHD. And meditation doesn't work for me. I've tried it for maybe 4 or 5 years. There's a level of like clarity I can get. But when you get into like this cold stress, it's almost like a forced like reset of your brain.
Yeah,
about,
it's just
like,
so
whenever you're in there.
focused. Like you just get so much focus, and then the mental clarity afterwards. Like that's what I was saying about I usually have to have a couple of coffees before I come to life. And this morning, just like walking around, mood elevated, dancing around on clouds, heaps of energy, and not like the speed, bumpy, jittery, anxiety energy of caffeine.
It's
it
so
was just
fucked
this,
that the most painful things help. You know what I mean? It's like that runner's high, all that shit that everyone has said forever. It always works. Dan, why does it work? You know what I mean? Like give me some, like what is happening in our brain when we immerse ourselves in cold water that makes us have this
elevated experience.
I'm not going to call it like this ice joy because that's something else, but like this cold bath, pleasure.
Yeah, it's a stressor. It's a cold shock to your body. And so your sympathetic nervous system releases more adrenaline and noradrenaline to activate energy in response to the cold. And that's a drug. And it feels like a drug. That's why you feel so alert. And
is it like good speed?
I don't think there's anything that's good speed, but
like natural, I guess
the dopamine, right?
Like, yeah,
it has some dopamine effect, but the main effect is a huge spike in adrenaline and noradrenaline. And so, like, it just as little as 20 seconds in a 4-degree ice bath can lead to a 2 to 3 times increase in your noradrenaline, and then, but you could go at a higher temperature, up to say 10 degrees, and go for a longer period of time, like 2 to 5 minutes. And get some benefit too, but the mental acuity that you feel when you're in and after the ice bath is largely driven by the adrenaline and somewhat the dopamine effect as well.
Can you get to 4 degrees with servo ice?
Oh, I think it's pretty tough.
Pretty hard, yeah.
Oh, that's good, right?
Yeah. And the other thing is like to bear in mind, like there's one thing which is like hopping into an ice bath and just staying still because you develop this thermal layer around your body. And so you might see the little rubber ducky saying 4 degrees, but around your body, it's actually probably a lot higher.
Okay, I remember the first time I did it, like I had to do like little chicken wing flaps.
I move around.
So to be
it's a
clear,
big enough ice bath, I like stretch the legs and do little like doggy paddling.
To be clear, you've called Bevo a coward for how he gets into the shower. You called me a coward.
I suggested he eat the frog. That's all I said.
So I'm just sitting there in my 4-degree ice bath, which I think is
but you're releasing all this like emotional load.
But you're saying the thermal layer around my skin is actually me just being a coward.
No, because some ice bars, particularly if you're going to like an ice bath clinic or doing in the bath, like don't actually allow you to move around that much. But if you just try and like do your little wiggle jiggle thing you do in the cold shower,
like just flap and you can feel the terror.
Totally, yeah. And you'll notice a big difference because you'll feel colder.
Okay. Is there a spot because and the great comic Dan Power made the funny joke that like it's a shame people on the Titanic didn't know about ice baths because they would have appreciated for about 2 minutes before they froze to death. Like at what point are they like 4 degrees? That sounds like when does hypothermia kick in?
Like I struggle to believe that most people would have the balls to go far enough to actually experience hypothermia.
Especially us two.
Almost everyone, including me, that you see in an ice bar doing ice bars. But
when does it get dangerous, I guess, is the
so
question.
hypothermia is a risk. But it is also like, it's a massive stress on the body. So if you've got like a known cardiac condition, like you really should be careful and probably speak to your specialist before you do something like that, because it's a massive vasoconstrictor. It increases your blood pressure, right?
So if you've got high blood pressure, ice baths, maybe talk to a doctor first.
Speak to your doctor. Yeah.
Hey, so I think sounds like there's some like practical stuff to dig into here. So like, if you are getting an ice bath, okay, so like the questions are maybe what's the temperature that's important? How long are you getting in for?
Yep.
What's maybe the protocol when you should do it? Maybe a couple of
cool. So I mean, like most people, I think these days kind of do it both because it is such an energizing practice, but also does have metabolic benefits. So there's a couple of like hormones that your body releases in response, irisin and adiponectin, that support converting white fat, which is relatively inactive, into beige fat, which is metabolically active and so calorie burning.
What does like metabolically active mean?
So white fat is basically just stored fat in the absence of any mitochondria. Beige and brown fat is basically fat that has mitochondria in it, and so it generates heat.
What's mitochondria?
Yeah,
Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Imagine
I
that as
remember
like the engine, the cellular engine of energy through ATP and the Krebs cycle. It's basically what produces all the energy. Mitochondria is like the furnace in your entire body at a cellular level.
You want to do stuff, mitochondria,
Yep.
and then the mitochondria is stored in the brown fat or the beige fat, not the white fat.
Not the white fat, yeah.
And the getting into the cold converts the white fat to the beige fat.
It does, and so you need a decent cold response to trigger the irisin that stimulates that conversion, and you also need to make sure that when you hop out of the cold exposure, you don't just go have a sauna or a hot shower, as the shivering and non-shivering mechanisms that naturally raise your body temperature back up is what stimulates the release of those hormones.
Right. And that's the increased thermogenesis of the beige fat comes from naturally warming up after being exposed to the cold.
That's right.
And that is the shivering process, which is your body
shivering
warming
and
you up.
non-shivering. Yeah, there's both mechanisms exist, but like the best heuristic for you to feel in your body is that I am still cold and I am naturally having to raise my body temperature up. And so like when I do an ice bath for 5 minutes, it probably takes me an hour afterwards until I feel like, I'm like no longer feeling like tight or feeling cold in my body. And like that's probably the hardest thing to do. Is most people are drawn immediately after doing something that is a shock, a stressor, like an ice bath.
So if I just do the ice, because an hour of being cold sounds terrible. I was cold for about 15 to 20 minutes. I mean, I must just warm up faster than you. So I don't know what that
Well,
means.
you are younger.
Big heart.
But fair. And but
Small
if
child.
I do just get in the cold and then I do warm up for practical reasons, I got shit to do or whatever.
Yeah.
How much of the benefit am I losing?
Like it is a relatively small pool of research on this so far. So like the dose response in terms of temperature and time is pretty unclear. And the effect of like raising your body temperature through a hot shower or sauna afterwards is still pretty unclear.
Okay, so probably still getting all the mental stuff of like the calmness in mind, or that we were talking about, because feeling like you're walking on air, but then less of the brown fat conversion thermogenesis that we were talking about before.
Yeah, and so like a good thing to bear in mind too is that you should, if you are optimizing for the benefits of training, either to improve strength or conditioning, then doing an ice bath after a workout is suboptimal, because you're reducing inflammation through the ice bath, and inflammation has a bit of a bad rap, and chronic inflammation is bad, but inflammation also drives adaptation. And so if you are dampening inflammation with an ice bath after training, you're dampening the potential benefits from that training. And so should probably do it on a rest day, or do it before your training, so that you can actually hack that noradrenaline and adrenaline that is released through the ice bath into a more intense training session that's also going to support a higher testosterone response.
And that's actually what I did today.
Well, again, cold shower is still a great way to start.
It is a great way to start. Absolutely. Yeah. But start with cold and end with cold.
Coward.
All right.
So doing it today actually. Then
Hold on. Technically, had I turned the shower off, waited a minute, and then turned the shower on cold and then jumped in, I am starting with cold. What's the gap between
You're only
heat?
cheating yourself.
All right. You can just hear me trying to find a way to make it.
Yeah,
okay, if I had to put a gun to your head and say, you've just met an alien who wants to try ice baths.
Start cold.
Yeah, but like, what's the temperature? What's the length? What should they use? Is give me a base level, entry level ice bath option.
Yeah, so like, it's a relatively impractical thing to do. You either go to a gym that has it, or you put ice in your own bath, or you buy a relatively affordable
I'm looking now,
inflatable setup at home,
$61,
and you dunk ice in there. You should just try and get as low as you can. It's pretty unlikely you're going to get down to 4 degrees. It's probably like 6 degrees is something that's feasible.
So let's talk about practicality in terms of like 3 bags in one of those portable ones, 5 bags, 6. Is it if it's full of ice? Like how much water to ice ratio?
Well, it depends on. So for me, when I hop in those things, it automatically just
it goes over.
Yeah. So like 3 bags is a reasonably good starting point.
3 bags. Okay, that's about what, $9 you can get from Temu. You can get a $61.
Where are you getting your ice? That's pretty cheap.
I just Googled servo ice and we've got one. Look, it might be not where we are, but let's say $5, $6 a bag of ice.
Yeah.
So we've got $15 for the ice. You can get it from Temu, which I don't support child labor, obviously, but I do support bargains. So you're sitting at about $75, and we've got a water thermometer for $3 from Temu as well. Yeah. Maybe $30 for an expensive one. You're looking at $100 for an entry level option. That's right.
And the mental grit is priceless.
And I would say, having done, I am only cold shower coward, but like, I'm not saying it's the same as like a 5K run, but like the familiarity of that feeling of like, fuck, I feel like I've done something and I feel good. And I feel like, that feeling you get after you've done laundry, and there's just something there. I don't know what it is, and I'm sure you've got a technical term for it, but I really do feel better. And if it costs me $100 over a year to get that done, I think that's a pretty good payoff.
So back to like how to actually access it, you're not going to be in for $100 a year because you've got to buy the ice each time.
Yes, obviously. So 15, and if you're doing that, I mean, you could buy ice trays.
Yeah, but you need enough. You need 4 to 6 bags depending on like the size of the.
Well, I think that's really helpful. So if you're listening and thinking I'll just get a bunch of ice trays, I think when you go and snap the ice cubes into it, you'll end up looking at it and it looks like there's maybe like 4 ice. It's you'd be surprised how much.
I just don't think anyone other than you is going to be surprised.
Yeah,
right. When you get there and you're just over that bath and you put the 4th ice cube in, you realize
who's got a freezer big enough to store all those bags of ice, right?
Well, the servo. That's why you buy it from the servo.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we're in back to we got a tub. We've bought a plastic one off the internet, which is $100 to $200. Probably a bit of a rip-off, but actually just like a bit purpose-built. Seems to do the thing.
AliExpress also works if you want a cheap option. Have a look at AliExpress.
Or you have a bathtub at home, or you have maybe a wheelie bin that you've cleaned out. Just be careful getting into that bad boy.
Yep.
You get, depending on how big the vessel is, you're going to have to go 4 to 6 to 8. A wheelie bin's probably 8 bags of ice. So 4 times 8, $32 to $40 every time you have to do that thing. It's a bit of a hassle, but that's kind of the cheapest option.
Well, can we just quickly talk about like $40? You're doing it 3 times a week. That's a huge.
Well, no, because $40 each time because you got to get new ice each time.
Yes, yeah. 40. So what's that? $120 a week. That's a bit much. Is that sort of investment versus? And let's say those 3 bags of ice gets you to 8 degrees. Let's say.
When I did it the other day in a tub, it only got down to 12. So I think. There's a question in there that maybe I'll throw to Dan in a second, which is like what actually is the temperature. But so that's the cheapest option, which is probably if you want to do it 3 times a week, that's probably impractical, but like maybe once a week as a starting point, $40 a week, 50 weeks in a year, $2,000, that's quite a lot. So I think
those expensive ones are starting to make sense.
Yeah,
now.
Exactly. So then membership, if there's a place that does it, a gym or whatever.
Recovery or one of those
places. That suddenly can become a little bit more accessible. Or you can upgrade to the next tier, which is like the kind of the ice bath plastic setup with a filter that cools and actually filters the water. And you're probably replacing the water once a week, but you don't need ice cubes. You just plug it into the wall, probably get an increase in energy bill. Don't know how much it is. Those things can be like $1,000 to $2,000. And then the next level up is like, some Odin-looking wooden oak.
Or move to Hobart.
Hectic thing, or move to Hobart.
Yeah.
And those things are going to be $5,000 to $10,000, but now they're just like cosmetically awesome as well. So like that's probably, that's probably the range.
And you're probably not a renter. in that
You're probably
situation?
not a renter, no.
Well, let's really talk about those people who do live on, the south coast of Australia. Like,
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, it's winter. The water gets to is that a reasonable? Because that's free, right? If I can go jump in the water at Torquay in the middle of winter, like that's an option. Is that an option?
Yeah, well, they'd get down to 14 maybe, 12 to 14. Wait, what are the temperatures, Dan?
I mean, it gets pretty cold down there. I grew up in Melbourne. Right? That is better than having like a hot shower than a cold shower in the morning.
Jesus Christ!
I suppose in Melbourne and Sydney they do call them the icebergers. They do go swimming in winter, and absolutely you're going to get a response. Even just a cold shower, you're going to get a response. But I think to optimize for all of the benefits in terms of like the maximal adrenaline increase, the conversion of fat, the increased metabolic health, the reduced inflammation, all of those different effects, then you're going to need to optimize more for temperature.
Okay, so what temperature?
But it's better than nothing. Because honestly, I've only ever done bags of ice in a container when I've had like a group of mates around at someone's place. Just doing that on your own on a regular basis is pretty unaffordable. I think the best place to start is either go to a gym that has it.
Find some mates.
Have a cold shower in the morning. You find some mates, absolutely.
So on the temperature, so what does the science actually say the temperature needs to be to get the?
It's pretty again. There's a pretty small pool of evidence so far, or icy pool of evidence so far.
Okay. So what's your recommendation?
I think under 10 degrees is probably the best starting point.
Okay, so 10 to 12. If you're getting to 12 in your backyard in an ice bath that you've bought, probably fine.
Yep.
Then if you're going to some type of recovery studio or whatever, they will have baths under 10.
Yep.
And then is it a matter of 10 is not as good as 8, not as good as 6, not as good as 4?
Yeah, I mean, there was a study on 20 seconds of exposure for 4 degrees, and that led to a 2 times increase in adrenaline.
How long does this adrenaline stick around for as well?
I'm not sure on a specific half-life of adrenaline, but...
more than 30 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you will
it's
feel
extended.
Yeah,
you 4 hours?
You will feel noticeable effects through the morning, if not the rest of the day.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sick.
So we think that lower temperatures are probably more impactful for making a response, or at least lower temperatures require less time to get the response, and say a 12 to 15 degrees dip in the ocean kind of in Torquay.
Yeah.
And
the key here is you got to get cold to get the response. So you can kind of...
But there's cold and then there's frigid.
Yeah, but there's practical ways to work around that. So you either increase your time in the cold to get cold enough, or you just, drop the temperature down and reduce your total exposure. But there's probably no way of hacking around. You do need to get cold, and it's going to be uncomfortable. And there are particular ways to improve your tolerance to that discomfort. And one way is to... put your head under. It triggers something called the mammalian dive reflex.
You couldn't just pour a jug of iced water on your head. You got to get under.
Absolutely, yeah, and raise some money at the same time.
Okay, you told me this before, specifically the point between your eyes. Is that kind of?
Yeah, well, it's the face.
Yep.
And so what it does is basically it activates more of your parasympathetic nervous system, so your rest and digest, or feed and breathe, or that may not necessarily be relevant at that time. And what happens is your heart rate starts to drop. And so if you do more diaphragmatic breathing, which will also synergistically activate more of your rest and digest, you will noticeably feel that your heart rate starts to drop, and you'll feel more tolerant of that environment you're in. If you just hop in and you automatically shift into oh my God, I'm hyperventilating, I'm doing chest breathing, your heart rate will jack up and you will feel more agitated and uncomfortable.
Okay, so get the face in and under, and that will. So the same reason when you jump into the ocean or a pool, once you get your head under, you feel.
Yeah, that's right.
Better.
I mean, it's no silver bullet, but it's going to help. And the other thing is, hold your hands just above the surface level of the water.
Okay, and that's not defeating the purpose, because my hands get really cold. I assume that's just heat leaving my body or something like that.
Well, your hands, your face, and your feet have a really dense in temperature-sensitive neurons, and so it can get really hard with your hands. And so if you hold them out, that can improve your tolerance.
Right. So just to be clear, I've got my hands in, you've got your hands out. But I just.
So where are your hands again?
They're in.
Okay.
They're in. I'm just doing a anyway. I think
it's not a coward competition, guys. I'm the winner, right? Now, how cold is an esky when you put your hand in? Because my hand basically can't be in an esky for more than 3
Mate,
seconds.
you probably put your hand in more eskies than me. I don't know.
So you're just putting your face in the esky now to get away from getting in the ice bath.
Well, just more being my hands are absolutely like 4 degrees. I don't think I have an idea of how cold that is.
Yeah,
I don't think I really understand.
But
how
remember,
cold that is.
there are different benefits you're looking to target here, right? So like one is like it activates you energetically.
Yeah.
And the other is it supports you metabolically to be better at burning fat. And so that means that the fatty tissue does need to be exposed to cold. And so I don't know how fat your hands are, mate, but like just putting your hands into like a esky is probably not going to drive that particular
I reckon
benefit.
esky cold is, I'm going to guess 6 degrees.
Fuck, doing your whole body like that would
6
be
to 8
psycho.
degrees, depending on the chilledness of your esky. But I guess like the only other thing that I don't think we've covered that stands out to me is like how long, like what am I actually, if I'm going in today to an ice bath, I've got something between like 4 and 10 degrees or whatever. What am I doing? How long am I getting in there for? What am I doing after?
Yeah, so 4 degrees, if it's 4 degrees, a minimum of 20 seconds will deliver a response and activating you energetically. But I think regardless of the temperature, you should probably go for as long as you feel comfortable that you can. So like if it's at 10 degrees, I think 2 to 3 minutes is like a really good rule of thumb. If it's a cold shower, I don't know about 20 minutes, but 5 minutes in the cold shower is probably enough to just make you feel a little bit more activated. But the dose response profile, i.e. like what temperature, how long, and how to optimize that for the various mechanisms of action is still pretty unclear.
Let's say I'm very overweight and I'm very thin. Are there different options for me in terms of exposure?
Well, I mean, look, that's not been studied specifically, and we could hypothesize, but
No, that's good. Oh, if there's no studies, that's handy.
just get in.
I think
Okay, good.
I think it's probably harder if you have less body fat.
Yeah, well, you might have you might have less insulation, but like when you're overweight, your the fatty tissue actually like dysregulates a lot of your endocrinology and your metabolic rate and a whole bunch of different things. So like you might struggle to raise your body temperature back up, and so like there's a whole bunch of competing things. Ultimately, it probably doesn't matter. Just get in.
No, that's good.
Okay.
And if there are any like pre-existing conditions or injuries that like you'd need to be worried about, like skin conditions, nothing comes to mind?
Well, I mean, some of these like if you go to a recovery clinic or a gym or whatever, like just be mindful that they are jacking it full of chlorine because there's like hundreds of bodies going in there every day.
Oh, okay.
Some filter the water. So that's probably, if you're sensitive to chlorine, it's probably something to be mindful of. And then if you have like a heart condition, you should speak to your specialist because it does cause is a vasoconstrictor and increases your blood pressure. So that's something to be mindful of. But on the whole, I think the important thing is like listen to your body. It's meant to be hard, but there are ways to tolerate that better over time. And there's a great benefit, in terms of how it energizes you and supports your overall metabolic health and a leaner body composition.
Cool. So I think just to wrap that, so getting in, if it's really cold, 30 seconds minimum-ish, and if you can stay in for a couple of minutes, that's great. It'll build up over time. The longer you can go without being ridiculous, the better. So if you can be getting in there for 5 minutes, that's going to be great.
Base entry level costing about $100 for the first time and then $15 every time after that if you're doing the cheapest option.
Yep.
And then for recovery or those gyms that do it, prices sits around. How much are you paying, Benny?
I'm paying $50 a week, which is pretty spicy, but I mean, I've used it 3 times this week.
Yeah. And then obviously if you want to get one of those plugged in options, that's $2,000 to $5,000. Good on you if you can grab that.
But then
I hear they're pretty
honestly, I think it's only a matter of time before most gyms are putting these into the gym just to remain competitive.
Well, that was the short and cold of it. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you very much, Benny. We're back next week. This is How to Get Good.